Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Peace's guest speaker series. Today, we have a really special treat for you. I think it's probably the largest event we've put on. We have 10 students who are from their second and third year at Osgoode Hall Law School, and they're here to tell you about their experience, especially over the last year in the pandemic with things being done differently. I mean, we have this on Zoom. It was kind of like Zoom law school for them, and they can tell you how it worked and what to look forward for those who are going to law school, and a little bit more advice for any of you pre-law students that are tuning in. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to the first person here, and then he can give a little bit of an introduction, and then we can go through with the rest of them. So first of all, we have Brett here joining us. Now, Brett, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into law school and all of that.
Of course. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. My background is in political science with a minor in philosophy. I'm quite interested in constitutional law and philosophy in general. Naturally, I wanted to go to Osgoode because it's known for excellence in social justice law. So far, the remote learning experience has actually been a really good experience, I've found. I haven't found it to be too disconnected because of social media. It has been a little bit tedious being stuck inside and studying. As far as advice for those of you who are going to be studying remotely next year, I would say just make sure that you have a routine, make sure that you have a quiet place, so that way it doesn't feel like you're just home all the time working nonstop. I know that can really lead to burnout. For next year, I plan on taking more courses in constitutional law, international law, tort law, environmental law. I think I probably want to do some placement working on corporate responsibility, but I'm going to have to see exactly what is offered and what grabs me the most. I'm hoping to really contribute some topics, particularly on corporate social responsibility. I'd really like to bring lawyers in to speak about that.
Okay, so Brett, thanks there so much for joining us, and I think next up we have Brian. So Brian, perhaps maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to Osgoode.
Sure. So my name is Brian. I'm in 3L right now, well, entering 3L. I completed my undergraduate at the University of Toronto, double majoring in city studies and public policy. So after my undergraduate, I worked at Drive Test for a few years and helped individuals obtain their driver's license. After that, I worked at an immigration law firm named Mammon, Sandlook and Kingwell, LLP. And that's where my interest to Osgoode heightened. And based on my experience there, that's why Osgoode was my first choice for a law school. So while I was working there, all of the senior counsel and the partners, they all attended Osgoode, and they all had great things to say about the school. They reassured me of how helpful the staff were at Osgoode and how amazing the professors were. And they advised me that whatever stream I chose to pursue, whether it's corporate law or social justice, Osgoode had a variety of resources and courses that would be of great assistance. So after working there, I pushed to attend Osgoode, and yeah, luckily I'm here. So
Thanks, Brian. And I think maybe we can just keep moving on there. I think next up we have Carmen.
Hi, I'm Carmen Dima. I have a business background. I worked many years in accounting and finance, including forensic accounting. And then I reached a point where I was questioning myself about what else is there. Getting a law education was always a dream of mine. And 2 years ago, I had the great privilege of starting at Osgoode, one of the greatest law schools in Canada. I am one of those people that believe that the law is the foundation of everything connected to human society, and everyone should get some sort of legal education. And when I was at the age of most law students here, I lived in a place that did not value much the rule of law, so there was no point for me in going to school. It was sham law school. That's about it.
Perfect. Thanks. And next up, we have Faye.
Hi, everyone. So, yeah, like you just said, I'm Faye. I'm entering 2L this upcoming academic term. For my bachelor's degree, I graduated in 2020 from the University of Toronto. I did 2 majors and a minor. I majored in philosophy and also a smaller program at Trinity College called Ethics, Society, and Law. And then I also did a minor in bioethics. In terms of law, I'm really interested in family law, as well as the intersection between law and philosophy. I really like legal theory, and I hope to one day do an LLM, maybe after a few years of practice. In my personal life, I'm interested in public health policy, especially as it relates to sort of end-of-life care and palliative care. And I'm also active in the feline welfare community. I have 2 beautiful cats, and I hope to foster some kittens soon. The reason I was drawn to Osgoode, there were a lot of them. I wanted to stay close to downtown Toronto. I like the campus, and I also really like the idea of having a big cohort. I came from a very large undergraduate program, and I wanted the opportunity to connect with lots of peers. Osgoode's really diverse, even more so than I anticipated when I was applying. A lot of the times, conversations around diversity, they don't mean diversity, they just mean racial diversity. Osgoode is different in terms of that. There's real diversity in terms of identity as well as life experience, which I think really sets Osgoode apart. And lastly, I think Osgoode has a great broader academic community, especially within the different departments at York. There's a lot of really cool scholarship going on at the graduate level, the doctoral level. All of my 1LTAs were brilliant, doing lots of cool stuff in terms of their research. And I love being exposed to that side of law in addition to the practical stuff.
Perfect. So thanks so much, Faye. And next up, we have Ivana.
Hi there, I'm Ivana. I'm entering 2L at Osgoode this year as well. I completed my bachelor's in medical science and psychology at Western in 2019, and I'm from London, Ontario. So after I graduated, I moved to Toronto to work for St. Michael's Hospital in mothering transitions. I did a lot of like postpartum psychology research, which was very interesting, but also kind of disillusioned me into research. I didn't like it as much as I thought I would, and that kind of led me to law. I wanted to go to Osgoode, like Faye said, primarily to stay close to downtown Toronto and the diversity that they spoke of, not just like Faye mentioned in terms of identity and student population, but also it seems and it is true that Osgoode opens the doors for you to really curate your legal education, whether you want to be doing practical work or staying in class doing research, and the interests there are super varied. I'm very interested in entertainment law and intellectual property because I am also have a lot of creative interests, and I'm interested in making movies, and I'm an online creator. So getting to do that while getting my legal education has been really amazing, and I'm excited to do more.
Thanks so much. Next up, we have Luke.
Hi, everyone. My name's Luke. I had a pretty unique experience to getting to law school, I'd say. My undergraduate, I took at Brock University. I took sport management, so kind of just the business of sport. And in finishing at Brock, I actually moved and worked in the Bahamas for 7 months. Lived that life, as you can see by the flag behind me. I still have my roots in the Bahamas. Came back. I kind of just wavered around a lot. Didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And at Brock, I had kind of taken a few law, political science courses. So knew that law was interesting to me, kind of looked into it some more, and I kind of learned of Osgoode. So it was one of the first universities, first law schools I had kind of looked into. And like the others have said, it's close to downtown Toronto. All the major firms are in Toronto. And as it turned out, I was accepted to Osgoode and Western, but unlike Ivana, I had no friends or family in London. While the campus in Western is really nice, I ended up choosing Osgoode. And I think going into my third year now, I'm happy with the decision I made.
Thanks, Luke. Actually, it's funny when you mentioned the Osgoode being close to downtown. I made the mistake, and I'm actually from Toronto. Like my whole life, I thought it was downtown where the Osgoode Hall was. I didn't realize until later that it was at the York campus, but still close enough. I think for you, you have the benefit of a subway line that I didn't have back in 2006. So hopefully that made it a little easier to access parts of the city there. Next up, we have Michael.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael. I just finished up 1L at Osgoode. My background, I took my undergraduate degree at McMaster University, and there I majored in integrated science and concentrated in biology, and I minored in economics. And towards the end of my time at McMaster, I started to realize that I had a passion for law and business, and that's actually the main reason why I was drawn to Osgoode was for their JD MBA program. So in the next academic year, I'll be at Schulich working on the MBA portion of my JD MBA education. And I'm really excited for that. I wanted to pursue a career in which I could sort of see my impact and be felt. And I knew that law was the route for me. With that being said, I'm really excited to be a part of this team, and I look forward to doing great things with everyone here.
Thanks, Michael. Next up, we have Pulkit.
Hi, everyone. I just finished up 1L at Osgoode, headed into 2L. So my background is also from McMaster. I have a Bachelor of Life Sciences with a minor in psychology. What drew me just in general into law school was my extracurriculars and not really my program itself, just volunteering within the community. I felt that learning the law is a great way to have an impact within your community and create change. Whether it's at the corporate level, whether it's at the social justice level, environmental law, any sort of branch, the law can really make a change. Osgoode I chose specifically, I think, because I tend to hear go where you want to practice. And I really want to practice within the GTA area or like downtown area. And also Osgoode just has great faculty. The professors here just are excellent. They're highly educated, highly informative, super helpful. And the student body, all the upper years have also been very, very helpful. And I heard just great things in general.
Perfect. Thanks, Pulkit. Next up, we have Vivian.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. My name's Vivian. I completed my 2L at Osgoode, and I'm currently working at Faskin's Toronto office this summer as a summer law student. About my background, I came to Canada for undergrad studies specializing in psychology at the University of Toronto. After graduation, I worked in another Canadian business law firm on Bay Street for less than 2 years until I decided to quit my job and go to law school because I had the privilege to see how lawyers work on a day-to-day basis, and that motivated me to challenge myself more and see where that brings me to. So the funny thing is I actually did my first year at Western Law, and I decided to transfer last year during the pandemic because throughout my years in Canada, I was just always in Toronto, and I thought with the pandemic, it might not be a bad idea to be closer to your support network. So I applied for transferring and I got accepted. And looking back, I'm very thankful that I made this decision, not because I didn't love Western. All the professors there were awesome, but because I guess good things kept happening after I transferred, even though it was during the pandemic. And I met lots of new friends at Osgoode, and all the upper years were all pretty supportive. Overall, I think it's a very good educational experience.
And next we have William.
Hi, everyone. Just thanks for everyone tuning into the podcast. This is awesome. And this is a great resource that is being run here. So for anyone looking, obviously, to learn more about the law or different facets of the law, this is awesome. A bit about myself. I'm from Ottawa, born and raised, and I grew up wanting to play in the National Hockey League. So my whole childhood was devoted to, being the best hockey player I could be. And I played in the Ontario Hockey League for 3 and a bit years for the Ottawa 67s. And then my career got cut a bit short. I ended up going to university and falling back in love with the game of hockey, playing varsity hockey for the Queen's University varsity team. And then on to Osgoode and playing hockey there as well. How I got to Osgoode is a bit of a weird story. If you would have told me 6 or 7 years ago that I'd be going to law school, I probably would have laughed in your face. It's been something that is it's new to me. I had teammates who were at Queen's Law, and they really sort of, drove my interest, and they were great mentors for me and pushing me towards this sort of career path. So I guess that goes to show that, you don't need to decide that law is your thing at a young age or be dead set on being a lawyer when you're older, that this can be something that you just sort of figure out as you go. And I guess like Carmen yourself, you're sort of in this boat as well. But, it's been a great experience at Osgoode for me. And I chose Osgoode because they were the first school that let me in. So I decided to go for whoever wanted me first. So.
Perfect. And hopefully, I think we have Deidre here. I think there's some technical issues there, but hopefully it works there. Maybe you can do a quick introduction for yourself as well.
I hope I don't get embarrassed and freeze at an awkward spot, but my name's Deidre Ann. I think I did it. And my background's in political science. I went to Ryerson University. I did a minor in law and sociology there. And then after that, I did a master's at York in political science as well. And then I go to Osgoode. I'm going into my 3rd year. And the reason I chose Osgoode is because when I wanted to stay in Toronto, is where I was born and raised. The reputation of Osgoode is just amazing. And I want to experience that. I knew a couple people that went there, and things that they experienced were just like amazing to me at the time. And also I heard of the great support system for the Black community that's at Osgoode, and now that I'm here, it's absolutely amazing.
Perfect. So thanks, everyone. And I guess obviously when we have 11 people, it's going to take a while to get through a bunch of questions. So for those who maybe have questions, and maybe you can connect with some of these people afterwards, and they can perhaps answer them if we don't get time today to do so. But one of the things there I wanted to ask all of you, and certainly for those who are going into 3rd year, you have a comparison point, right? You have what most of your 1st year was like compared to your 2nd year that was done remotely. Maybe you can tell us a bit about what law school has been like for you, maybe clubs that you're involved with, just how the classes were, the community, and certainly, obviously, the elephant in the room being the pandemic and how things went remotely, and what you can share kind of from that experience. So maybe we can start with you, Brett, and go back through everyone alphabetically again.
I'm not sure that I have anything else to add other than what I said before. I found that classes over Zoom actually hasn't been that bad of an experience. I did find that I did connect with classmates and professors outside of class hours, and it's been a good experience.
We always love short and succinct here. So thanks, Brett. Next up, we have Brian.
Yeah, so to be honest, at first, learning remotely was kind of tough. Zoom fatigue is like a real thing. So So watching 3-hour lectures, like and staring at your computer screen was I was dreaded just doing that. But after a while, I started to really appreciate all the benefits that come with remote schooling. So I live in Scarborough, so I definitely didn't miss the commute going to Osgoode each and every day or every other day. Um, and then even I guess during exam seasons, I felt like doing exams remotely, there's definitely some positives to it. You could just control F through your notes instead of flipping through your summary during like a timed crunch exam. So there's definitely some positives that come with remote learning. And to be honest, I didn't find that this year was too bad.
Perfect. And we'll head over to Carmen. Now, Carmen, certainly you can share from the mature student perspective as well. I think maybe a little bit differently from some of the others here, what you experienced like in your time here at Osgoode and especially over the last year.
The thing is, when you are a little bit different in the sense that I'm older, so my connection was not necessarily as strong as with my colleagues as it would have been if I were on of the same age with them. So probably in the beginning of studying remotely, I didn't miss them too much, or this is what I thought about that. I'm sure I'm in agreement with everybody here that it was studying remotely is hard. It's like a stress added to the regular stress of law school. When I compared it with the first year, most of which I had to go to school, as Brian said, it's a great thing. You don't have to commute. I live in Midtown Toronto, but if I didn't live at 7 o'clock in the morning, I would reach rush hours and it took me forever to get to school. So of course there are benefits. The problem is this studying remotely was too long. So it puts a burden on your mental health. And for sure, I felt like I wasn't able to concentrate as well as before, or maybe I was not as motivated as before. We can look at it, oh, it's so great. I saved some time with the commute. At the same time, don't forget you connected with your friends, probably mainly through whatever media you like. You lost that connection, that thing that we humans need. I need that person to look into my eyes, be close to me, and I know they understand me, or I can connect them maybe even professionally when we discuss an issue. There is that bright line that is not going to be replaced by anything in remote. So we do what we can.
Thanks, Carmen. And over to you, Faye.
Yeah, so when the announcement first came in the summer of 2020, when we were finding out that it was going to be remote, at least for the fall semester, I was really worried. I was really apprehensive. I thought I wouldn't be able to make friends, develop a social network, even just as far as asking questions about coursework. I was worried that no one would talk. I also felt like I was missing all of the fun parts, the things like formal events and pub nights, stuff like that. But I think what really made those worries kind of dissipate was my 1L peers. I had a great time just because of them. I found that other students were really willing to connect with me, likely because they had the same concerns that I did. And everyone was really funny, friendly, passionate. There's so many characters at Osgoode, I have to say. And a lot of other 2Ls on this call I feel really connected to. I feel like we all went through this bonding experience of having a Zoom School of Law. And that was like completely unique, I think, because the upper years couldn't really give us advice about doing a whole year of Zoom school. They hadn't been through it yet. And so we all had to figure it out together. And I think I'll look back fondly on it. I feel like in 10 years, I'm going to like call Ivana and talk about all the times I unmuted my mic in class and said something embarrassing. So I actually had a good experience because of the community I was able to form.
Yeah, unmuting. I think earlier I forgot to mute myself here. Even I don't know how that translated, but it's always a problem that you don't accidentally shout out something in class. I suppose in person, but I suppose that could happen. Ivana, what about you? What was your experience like?
Yeah, just following after Faye, who was one of my good friends that I made in 2L, and we've only met like a few times, I think says a lot to the experience that Osgoode created for us to still make it so lovely and peer based despite I will say, as someone who tends to be, I came from a huge undergrad classes always through science and psychology. I tend to be more to myself in class and less engaged and just, and I found my one piece of advice would be to students working remotely. You kind of have to force yourself to be engaged because it is really easy. It's easier than ever to not go to class. It's easier than ever to mute yourself and not show up and not talk to anybody. So every time that I stepped out of my comfort zone to make a connection online or like take a class very seriously, despite it being online, it always paid off. So I think it can be a great experience if you motivate yourself and like remind yourself that it's still school, even though you're in your bedroom and you're not commuting. So yeah.
Thanks, Ivana. Luke, who's in his bedroom?
Yes, this is my home. I think, yes, I don't want to echo what everyone's already said, so I'll just kind of explain the process as a 3L, what had happened as COVID was starting and we were approaching exams. So really it was, it's the COVID cases started rising a lot in the start of the year, but it was in March when it was really becoming an issue and fear was kind of building. So that's when Osgoode kind of make this, they said, we're going fully online. And no one knew what that meant. No one knew what Zoom was. Like Zoom came out of the blue, and now they have the lion's share of, video sharing. Like I remember the fear when no one knew what was happening. Like my friends, some of them aren't from Ontario, so they thought we were going to be locked down. So they were catching like last minute flights to fly back home, and it was a very scary situation. That I'm really fortunate that I had a great group of 6 to 10 good friends to kind of ease the burden a little bit. But then Osgoode, they were really good about it. Like it ended up being pass fail for the most part, which honestly, like it kind of kills all motivation to study at that point. But, it was a once in a lifetime experience, really, but we got through it.
Thanks, Luke. On to you, Michael.
Yeah, so my experience was a little bit different than Luke's. I was just finishing up my undergraduate degree when COVID had sort of come to the forefront, and by the time I began at Osgoode in September, naturally I was sort of drawing comparisons between life at McMaster, where I was living away from home on campus many hours per day with my friends all the time, to then moving back home and logging into Zoom for class, which I found to be difficult. I think it's a lot easier to be distracted when you're doing your work in the same place that you're going to bed all the time, and even if that's the case in a student house, you have the opportunity then to get out and go to the library or hang out with some of your classmates, make new connections, volunteer on campus. So it was difficult being online for the very first time. I found that group work was much more difficult online, and I feel like it's a lot more difficult to bounce ideas off of people through a screen, and lots of people are accidentally stepping over each other when they're trying to speak and sharing documents. It was a whole new world for a lot of us. But that being said, I'm grateful that Osgoode was very supportive throughout the whole process, and at times would lighten up the workload for us a little bit. And I really valued the things that I was doing outside of law school and taking time to myself to take care of myself and make sure I still was keeping up with friends, remotely the best I could and focusing on my hobbies. And I think that's what kind of pushed me to stay motivated and at the end of it, I learned a lot from it, and I'm not sure if, next year will be online or in person or a blend, but I am looking forward to being back in person when that time comes. And if it's not for a little while, then, this was a learning experience, and I'm prepared to handle, whatever comes at us next.
Thanks, Michael. And Pulkit, you're up next here.
I definitely relate to everything that Michael said as well. I was as well comparing to my undergraduate experience and just having the ability to live in a student house with friends or going to the library, meeting with people, whether it was for extracurriculars or just for a social outing. I think I really missed that aspect, like the social life aspect, which I was really looking forward to for law school as well. So that was a little bit difficult. And I think burnout is much quicker when you're just always at home and you're studying in the same place that you take breaks in. So it's really hard to separate your study life from like just relaxing. But I think a few good like pros were that since it was online, much of it was recorded, so you can go back, watch it later, and you could save a lot on commuting time and didn't have to wake up early. So there were definitely pros to Zoom school. But the biggest cons would be missing out on social life or just having events in person, networking, and getting to know your peers a little bit more. As for the upcoming year, I guess I think they're projecting that fall will be online, whereas winter we may be back in person. So there's something to be looking forward to.
Thanks, Pulkit. Vivian?
I definitely feel empathetic towards many of the things my peers here have said. For me, the major drawback of virtual school or virtual anything was I sometimes have to stare at my laptop for like 6 to 8 hours, and that just made me very dizzy. And for some classes, the prof will ask you to keep your camera on, and that was just a torture sometimes because you're just so tired from like staring straight at your laptop. But besides that, I actually found everything else to be pretty surprisingly smooth. I like the fact that I don't have to commute. I like the fact that I could utilize small bits of time and just do something that I enjoy, which I never got to do before. For example, like learning other languages and stuff. And as for teamwork or like group assignments, I was most worried about that before school started because I was a transfer student and I obviously knew no one. So that's when reaching out to people became extremely important. I had to force myself to connect to total strangers at the time and just ask them for advice, ask them for summaries, ask them for insight about Osgoode, about the course selection system and everything. And most people were extremely helpful, and they were willing to go beyond, above and beyond to help you, and that really helped me ease into my studies at Osgoode. And for me, it seemed weird because I did my 1L intern at home, 2L school at home, and then 2L recruit at home. So everything seemed to be like virtual. But overall, I would say as long as you're willing to keep reaching out to others when you need help, or when you just feel like you're lonely and you need some support, I think it's not that bad, even if we're stuck at home.
Thanks, Vivian. William?
Yeah, you know what? It's going to be hard to add too much to this, but I thought that it was a difficult year. You lose reasons to really go outside and do too much. So I was trying to force myself to go out and walk every day. And, a big part of law school obviously is networking and meeting new people and getting exposed to different things. And that was sort of lost, I found, a lot of the time. With that being said, it wasn't all bad. We did have fun, and everyone tried to be more open to communicating, and sort of all their channels were open. You could always sort of reach out and talk to people, and people sort of had a mutual understanding that things are different, and it's not weird to message someone out of the blue anymore. In terms of if you have to do online school next year, or at least first semester, I would say definitely try to invest in a comfortable office chair. and maybe get a second, like a dual monitor screen. So, because you do spend so much time sitting and on your computer. So those are two big things that I never really used before that were instrumental in me getting through this year. So.
Perfect. Thanks, William. And Deidre?
So for me, ironically, the first semester where it was officially remote, I was actually at the school every week because I was in trial advocacy, and that was the only course that they let go on in person. And my first year, I was one of the students that took advantage of the recorded lectures. So I actually ended up going to the school more during the pandemic than before the pandemic even happened. And I will say, for the students that have to continue with online schooling, it's actually really, really good that you're getting the opportunity to reach out to people like virtually and reach out to people if you need things and stuff, because when you're looking for jobs and when you're networking, like, that's a big part of it. And if you're not comfortable, like, this whole setting is a really good way to just to get comfortable in reaching out to random people, reaching out to lawyers and possibly partners to talk. So take advantage of that.
Perfect. Thanks everyone for kind of recapping there. I know some of you touched on this, but I mean, we can go beyond just obviously remote, but in terms of those who are going to Osgoode, they'll be starting next month, I think towards the end of the month, or those thinking about going to Osgoode or even law school in general. Maybe it's something from your experience, whether it's preparing for the LSAT, studying in undergrad, or just from the experience that you just shared with time at Osgoode. What kind of advice do you have for those coming in the future, whether to Osgoode or to law school in general, that that's really worked with you, and certainly with so many people here, I know it's probably going to be hard if you're William and Deidre at the end to kind of come up with something unique, but maybe there's something different. And I know some of you also touched on the importance of the diversity at Osgoode that I think you get with such a larger class and the different perspectives, as well as taking care of your mental health, which again, something that could happen whether you're in school or practicing, certainly in the future with our profession. So we'll start with you again, Brett, and perhaps you can expand on any area that you think be useful for those who are either about to start Osgoode this year or thinking about law school in the future.
Yeah, I think we've had a lot of great advice given so far. The one thing I would emphasize is the importance of getting out into nature for your mental health. Certainly, as much as I could, I went to conservation areas, and it's really been incredibly helpful. As far as advice goes for, say, the LSAT, I would say definitely spend a lot of time learning to really master the test itself, particularly time management. Often people go into the LSAT thinking they just have to master difficult questions, but it really is its own unique beast. And you really have to manage it well to get a high score.
Thanks, Brett. Over to you, Brian.
Yeah, so although like law school could be time intensive, I think it's important not to forget all the things that made you happy prior to law school. So whether it's going to the gym or meeting up with friends, for me, it's like playing basketball. It's important to keep a strong school life balance. Focusing all your time and energy on law school, in my opinion, does more harm than good when it comes to performing well in law school. In order to perform well, like you need to ensure that you're relaxed and your mind's at ease, and focusing like primarily on law school is just, and cutting everything else out will just put yourself in constant stress. And I think that's going to have a negative effect on your performance. So it's just finding that balance between what makes you happy in law school, I feel is very important.
Thanks, Brian. Next up, we have Carmen.
Carmen, yes. If I can be a little bit motherly in the beginning and talking about studying remotely or just thinking of going to law school or being in law school and feeling overwhelmed, I would say shortly that go back to basics. Eat well, exercise, and stay connected with your friends. It's the most important thing. You can build whatever on this platform. In regard to those that are thinking of going to law school, I would start by telling them go deep and understand exactly the reasons why. I don't know much about the law profession, but studying law is hard. It is well consuming, and yes, it will change you in unbelievable and surprising ways. Just make sure that you are doing it for the right reasons.
Thanks, Carmen. Faye?
Yeah, so firstly, just to speak to the remote aspect, I think a good piece of advice is to make the medium work for you as best as you can. There are definitely some benefits to doing class online on Zoom. Everyone's sort of on a grid in front of you. You don't need to walk up to someone to start a conversation with them. You're not limited to the people you happen to sit next to on the first day. You don't even have to find out their name to talk to them. It's right there in front of you. And so I have messaged a lot of my peers who would later become my friends, just basic messages like, hey, what's up? And that's how I made connections. And I probably wouldn't have done that if classes were in person. It's also harder to focus on Zoom, at least for me. And it was so easy to default to, oh, I'll just watch the recording so I can skip over the parts I don't want to see, or I can watch it at 2x speed. But I found that in first semester, I got overwhelmed with doing that too much. In second semester, the way I sort of remedied that problem was engaging a lot more with live classes by participating, by sharing thoughts or even jokes in the chat. That really helped my focus. In terms of law school more generally, so it's true that law school requires you to sort of develop this very specific type of reasoning, this very specific type of writing, and it's likely, a lot more reading than you're probably used to, whatever you were doing before. However, despite all that, you know yourself and your learning style the best. You should start with the strategies that have already worked for you in your life so far, whether in undergrad, at your job, and then adapt from there if you need to. For example, someone might tell you that OneNote is way better than Word, or you have to type your notes because you'll never be able to keep up by hand. But if you've never had a problem doing Word, for example, or writing notes by hand, it's a lot of trouble to go and learn a new skill, and likely more trouble than it's worth. So do what works for you so you spend less time, say, transferring all your notes onto a completely different program and then realizing you don't like it and switching back. That'll really eat up your times during exams. And sleep. If you have to decide between sleep and an 8:30 a.m. class, I'm not going to say pick sleep all the time. That's what I did, but at least pick it a few times. It's really important to take care of yourself and develop those healthy sort of boundaries with school that you will later use in your career.
Yeah, and if you love sleep, don't take a Friday 8:30 a.m. elective if you can't avoid that. Ivana?
Yes. In terms of the remote learning, I feel like I spoke to it a little bit and everyone has kind of given their take on it. I think my advice for law school in general is similar to Faye's advice, that it's very easy to get caught in the frenzy of listening to the students who seem to be the best and most knowledgeable and talk the most in class. But you got to trust what you think works for you. And also, I would just say, for someone like me coming from a science background, I felt so out of place and I didn't really understand a lot of just basic terms that were going on within the first week. And I think everyone feels like that, is my advice. So just, there are really no stupid questions or stupid points, and you just have to trust that you are there for a reason and you have a valuable opinion to say or believe. So, yeah.
Thanks, Ivana. Luke?
Yeah, so I think in regards to the LSAT for people considering law school, you're going to see that that test is honestly, it's terrible. But for me, it took me 3 times to get anywhere near like a decent score. And now that I'm through it, like law school is not like it's not comparable to the LSAT. The LSAT was a terrible experience for me, at least. I don't know if my friends here think the same way, but as far as that, just get through the LSAT, you will be okay. And as far as tips for just law school in general, I'd say the biggest one for me, I talked about earlier, but just getting a group of friends to either bounce ideas off for school or just to hang out with, or to say, hey, I'm not feeling so great today. Like just someone to talk to was so important for me. And especially for me as someone in undergrad, I didn't really do that. Like that's honestly partly because my program was super easy. So I didn't have to really bounce ideas off of anyone. But just getting that good group behind you was so important. Yeah, that's my biggest tip for sure.
Thanks, Luke. Michael?
Yeah, well, a lot of what I wanted to say is actually quite similar to what Ivana mentioned, and so I won't, repeat that entirely. But like she said, there are times where you will doubt yourself, and everyone in law and in other professional schools or grad schools will, at some point or another, doubt themselves, and they're constantly surrounded by great, successful people, and it's natural to feel that way. And so I wanted to share a little bit of a story from this past year. I don't know if this was because we were on Zoom, but I found that during lecture, I wasn't speaking too much. I wasn't answering a ton of questions. I wasn't asking a ton of questions. Typically, I think I would probably have done that a little bit more frequently in person. But there was one contract class, I guess this was towards the end of the first semester of 1L, where I had, raised my hand and asked the professor about some sort of connection I noticed between a couple of concepts. He answered it. He said it was a great question. I kind of forgot about it. And fast forward to the end of the winter semester of 1L, I was doing a group project with some students who I had not really had much experience working with before. And at the end of the one of our last meetings at the end of this project, one of the students said to me, I remember back in first semester, you asked this question in contracts, and it really it made something click. And those two concepts, just they made me feel a lot better about them. Something about what you said made me understand things a little bit better. And so that kind of made me realize that, I do have valuable contributions, and the things that you say in class, even if to you seem like, oh, everybody knows this, that may not be the case. So just remember, your value, and that you have a lot more to contribute than you might realize.
Thanks for sharing, Michael. Pulkit?
So I'll just start quickly going over the LSAT. I would say it also took me 3 attempts. Definitely a difficult test. I think it's changed vastly since I wrote it. It's online now. There's less sections. My one tip is just practice, 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 practice. That's the way to master the LSAT, and make sure when you're practicing, review what you get wrong, and you'll get there. As for law school, similar to Michael and Ivana, coming from a science background, I didn't know much other than my high school classes that I took in law. But that's okay, because we're all in the same boat. We all don't know a lot, and the professors also know that, so they give us room to learn, and they ask us questions on purpose to probe us, to help us learn. And I would say make sure that you also ask questions. Don't be shy. We're all just there to learn. You also pay a lot to learn, so it's your right to ask questions. And if you're afraid that you're asking a dumb question, which I felt every single time I asked a question, I would always preface it with, I think this might be a dumb question. That way the professor would be like, no, this is a great question. And I just feel better.
Thanks, Pulkit. Vivian?
Yep, I think I just have 3 general pieces of advice that I can give with respect to law school. The first one is, if you want to do well, I think it's kind of important to try to keep up with your coursework. Something that I failed miserably in 1L and probably 2L as well. But I do think that it is important to do so if you can. Like, even if that means to do a bit extra every day, I think it's, in my personal experience, I still think it's better than procrastinating and waiting till the end of the semester to just cram, in 3 days. That is not very good to absorb knowledge into your head, really. The second piece of advice is just to try to choose what you want to learn and what you love to learn, instead of thinking everything in relation to finding a job, which I know is on most law students' mind since day one at law school. But I just feel like if you're too focused on finding a job, everything you learn kind of becomes like a tool, not something that's your passion, and that could change, why you came to law school for. So that's my second piece of advice. And the last one is really just to connect with someone while you're at law school. I know many people mentioned to find a support group, to find some friends, but if you cannot seem to do that, even just at first while you're still adjusting, I'd say talk to your professors, talk to anyone really. Like, it doesn't have to be your peers, it doesn't have to be like an inner circle. The professors, based on my personal experience, they all love to help, and they are probably the wisest group of people at law school. So I'd say if you talk to them, that's the right way to go.
Thanks, Vivian. William?
Yeah, again, it's going to be hard to add much to what everyone said. It's been great. My one piece of advice, and it's a bit of an oxymoron, would be get comfortable to get outside of your comfort zone, because there's so many opportunities to do different things and sort of push yourself. And for me personally, like mooting and doing sort of public speaking, that kind of stuff, that always scared me, and I was never very good at it. And that's what part of law school is doing moots and sort of mock trial, that type of stuff. So I signed up for whatever I could, and it sucked when I was doing it, but I feel better now being on the other side of it and knowing that I can do something like that. So
Thanks, William. Deidre?
Just to reiterate, I think what Michael and Ivana said, I think what they were talking about imposter syndrome, absolutely everyone experiences it. So when it happens to you, don't feel bad.
Perfect. So, because when you have so many people, the time really flies by here. So perhaps we have any final sort of little tidbits here, and maybe you can address what justice and peace this here means to you, and maybe in a couple of sentences, anything you may want to add for anyone listening, especially the students who are an undergraduate or my paralegal students, or even those going into first year at any law school. Anything to add, and then perhaps maybe you can also address the point there of the phrase justice and pieces and what that means to you, and what it's like going to be getting involved here over the next little while. So go over to you first, Brett.
Well, I would say that to those of you who are an undergrad and you're considering law, but you're not entirely sure if it's for you, I was in your situation, and I can tell you there's a lot of resources out there that can really help you decide. There's awesome podcasts like the one we're on now. There's plenty of panels that the universities record and publish. So definitely dive and dig deep, start there. Also look at course outlines that law students develop in preparation for exams, and ask yourself, do you find this interesting? Could you see yourself doing this? Look at practice exams. And as far as what justice and pieces means to me, it's a great resource for a lot of people, and I have benefited a lot from these talks. So I want to give back, and I want to explore a bunch of issues that I find interesting through justice and pieces. So thanks.
Thanks, Brett. Brian?
Yeah, I guess it's just similar to what everyone else was saying. don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone and ask for help, whether it's from professors or your peers. Um, the community at Osgoode, and I'm pretty sure at most law schools are, everyone's willing to help. So just don't be afraid to do that. And Justice in Pieces to me is, I guess, just looking at the resources that are available through this platform. It gives law students and paralegal students a inside look at the legal profession. So schooling can only do so much. And it's kind of hard to get a clear picture of the real world. And that's where I think Justice in Pieces provides valuable insight. So what I would like to contribute is just my experience and something like this where future law students could gain a better understanding of the law school experience is something that I would want to contribute to this organization.
Thanks, Brian. Carmen?
I apologize, there is a background noise where I am here. I'm going to speak a little bit louder. So to me, Justice in Peace is a door ajar. It lets you see in the other room where there are people knowledgeable that you might want to know about their experiences. You might want to see what they know and you can learn from. My experience is a little bit different from the regular law student. And if I can add this different to this little story I have to the mix, I might help those, I don't know, 0.1% of those thinking of going to law school as a second profession. In this way, I just want to help Justice in Pieces and hope that somebody might have a benefit out of it, as I had from some other resources.
Thanks, Carmen. Faye?
Yeah, so just in terms of Justice in Pieces, to me, that name really evokes all the moving parts that go into legal practice, say into a given file or a contract, or even say like a refugee board hearing. And I love the idea of getting non-lawyers who work in the legal field and non-paralegals, particularly for large firms. I think as law students, paralegal students, lawyers, we sort of have the tunnel vision on the law side and giving legal advice, making legal calls, but we don't really think about all the work that goes in behind the scenes so that lawyers can focus on law. For example, I personally really love to talk to someone who does 24-hour document staffs for a large firm and works the night shift. My partner, who's a lawyer, tends to send documents in at 3 a.m. like quite frequently. And I think they would have some great stories and maybe some tips for what we as lawyers can do better to be more considerate of the broader community in a given firm. And my advice would just be a bit about what I plan to do giving forward. I'm keeping my options open and I'm trying to set personal goals rather than goals based on things out of my control. Like, for example, whether I get a job at my first choice firm. I think that's better for my personal mental health and growth. And my main goal is to sort of really develop an understanding of the areas of law I'm interested in through my upper year courses, and also to develop oral advocacy. I think that helps no matter what field you're in. And I just want to learn as much as I can, and that alone will be satisfactory. And I hope I can take my own advice.
Thanks, Faye. Ivana?
Yeah, I think Justice in Pieces, it intrigued me just for like the creative aspect of it. But also I think it is such a great tool for students and those looking to go to law school to demystify the process of being a law student. But for me personally, it also is helping me demystify what it means to be a lawyer, because I'm a year into it and I still feel so out of my comfort zone and confused about what my future is going to look like. So I think the opportunity to hear so many different people with so many different paths and professions and areas of law that they're in is going to be so cool for me as a student, and then also for anyone who is maybe thinking of going to law school or is in law school. Yeah, and and I'm really excited to keep working.
Thanks, Ivana. Luke?
Yeah, so I think what justice in pieces means to me kind of ties in with my biggest gripe with law school, and that what we learn here, it's not really indicative of what it's like to be a lawyer. So that's why I'm so grateful for mediums like this, in that it gives you much more of a hands-on understanding of what you're actually going to be doing, because it's not all just like learning torts cases and crim cases. So that's what it means to me.
Thanks, Luke. Michael?
To me, justice in pieces is really it's really about making law more accessible. Like a lot of my peers here have said, the legal field seems kind of mysterious. It seems kind of out there for a lot of students. Unless you're taking a class in high school or undergraduate degree, there are no required classes to apply for law school. So many of us may not have had experience in those classes. So hearing directly from the perspective of people in the field, or people, that come into contact with legal issues from a day-to-day basis, such as politicians or other professionals, I feel gives a really good insight into what the field is like, what the career has to offer, and provides a lot of important advice to students that are looking to find their way and make important decisions in their life.
Thanks, Michael. Pulkit?
Yeah, similar to what Michael said, I think I've been saying that the whole time. Is that justice in pieces is just a great way to make like the law more accessible. I did participate in a previous podcast, and that's what I really enjoyed about it. It was just a great opportunity to help other people learn about the law, but also as an opportunity for me to learn more. And this is also a great way to meet other lawyers and learn about their professions, what they did after law school, and hopefully it motivates other students or even myself.
Thanks, Pulkit. Vivian?
Yes, so I think justice in pieces is just an opportunity for me to connect to the world, to more legal professionals, to more law students to be, and really a way for me to contribute back to the society where so many people have helped me, and I want to become like helpful to others, in their journey pursuing law as a career, and also to just connect other people who have an interest in law, or have a passion to learn more about the law.
Thanks, Vivian. William?
Yeah, so I'm going to echo what others said, but Justice in Pieces is a great opportunity, obviously, for myself to learn and to network with other lawyers in the field, but also for other people to sort of figure out and see like what's going on, because there's a running joke, at least between me and my friends, and even after first year, we sort of look at each other and say, is this what lawyers actually do? Like, we don't really know what the day-to-day looks like for lawyers and people working in the legal field. So this is just an awesome opportunity to learn and meet new colleagues and sort of grow awareness to sort of what's happening. And obviously, it's a great resource for anyone thinking about joining the legal field. So.
Thanks, William. Deidre Ann?
For me, justice in pieces just means leveling the playing fields. And when you get into law school, you'll realize that the access to justice is a very large issue. And I think that it's just trying to solve that. And it's also not just for paralegals and law students, but it's for everybody. And I really appreciate that.
Perfect. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. And certainly, I think everyone here maybe undersold themselves a bit, because they are all exceptional students. I know I looked over and I think that they're going to add so much here to the team, and you'll be hearing from them over the next little while, and they're going to share more. So if you have certain things you want to talk about more, we can certainly have panels in the future, or you can reach out directly to us here. And I'm really looking forward to the infusion here of different perspectives. And I think really, certainly maybe I'm biased being an Osgoode alum, but it's great to see that the tradition of excellence there continues on. And again, looking forward to working with all of you. And I think everyone here listening, certainly we're looking forward to now continuing to provide you more and making things more accessible. And as people have said, demystifying what it's like to be a lawyer or a paralegal or others involved in the profession. I think as to echo what Faye said, that there's more than just the practitioners as well, other opportunities for you. And I think one of the things there, I think from listening to everyone, and hopefully for all of those tuning in, you can answer the question if someone asks you, well, what do you do to go to law school? Well, you can actually, in one instance, you can study science, you can study math, you can study physics, or you can go play in the OHL. I mean, all of those are valid answers, right? And again, I think looking back 20 years ago, I would have thought what was told to me was go and get a poli-sci degree and then you go to law school, right? But that's a path, and certainly people have taken that path, but there are plenty of different paths there. And I think from listening to everyone here, you can see that there's different ways to go to law school, and certainly from the legal professionals and everyone else that you get an opportunity to tune in each and every weekday here, you can see that there's different paths after law school as well, or from paralegal school, or even from others in the legal profession. And so again, looking forward for everyone to being a part of this team, and looking forward for everyone listening to keep tuning in every day at 5. And we're hoping now with some more hands on deck that we're going to see a lot more things there, try to do more, provide more free resources. Again, everything is free. And again, a perfect time to remind you of the people that we bring on here. Tomorrow we have the Honorable Doug Downey, the Attorney General of Ontario, joining us at 5 p.m. I mean, where else can you say you have an opportunity to ask the sitting Attorney General questions about how they got to where they are? And we hope everyone can tune in, and hope everyone that's here continues to be a part of Justice in Pieces. And we're really excited for the next step here in the organization. So thank you all for joining and sharing, and thank you for everyone for tuning in. Take care, everyone.